Do one more, something slow.
Something slow.
You want some something hurts to go into the shir with that? We're gonna do one more niggin, one more slow niggin, something hard to give Emir Hashem just to bring us even higher, and then Emir Hashem with that we'll get into the Torah of the day. Our sponsors.
Oh. Hi. Sports. I want to thank the following generous sponsors. We have a lot. Barry Dubin, in honor of his grandmother's birthday, on the Rus Bas Max, and in honor of her Neshama Shnev Aliyah, and in honor of Rabbi Revinson Silber's new granddaughter, Mazel Tov. Matt Walters, in honor of Yisroel Blumen for all his help and friendship, in honor of the art study, the Piagetza, and his role in helping all of us become closer to Hashem, and for a speedy victory over those who seek to harm the Jewish people.
Amen.
Yisroel Blumen, in honor of the engagement of Reb Steve Galostov to Jordana Herschel. Sponsorship.
Amen.
Not only that, he said, may we be as decisive as he is, and for him not being a fok. So for those of you who were here last week,
that's right.
Zevi Daniel, Ilu Nishmas, his stepfather Yaakov ben Avraham, his yahrzeit was today, Bav Cheshvan, and Mordi and Nicole Spiro, an appreciation to Hashem for a healthy baby girl, Mazda. An appreciation to their parents for all of their help and for always being there for them, and an appreciation of Rabbi Silber for all of his support.
Shkoyach. And a tremendous shkoyach to Reb Tzvi. Chaburah, again, we come here, Baruch Hashem. I'm sorry? Yaakov Bornstein. And Rabbi Yaakov Bornstein. So thank you to Reb Tzvi and Rabbi Yaakov for the beautiful spread tonight. Tremendous shkoyach. Morning, Mazel Tov, Mazel Tov to Rav Morty on the birth of our daughter, Miras Hashem. Come back Shabbos morning. You mentioned B'Shah Tov Maslachas. We're going to name her here at the shul. Mazel Tov to Reb Steve on his occasion of his engagement to Jordana Herschel. Herschel and Baruch Hashem all should occur. She was Zocheh Miras Hashem to stand under the chuppah B'Shah Tov U'Matzlachas and build a binyan Adei Adar 110 Shanim Tovos. So I will say, and a tremendous thank you to Reb Eli and to Reb Zevi for the beautiful Nagina, for the beautiful music, for the exceptional. So I will say, we have a special opportunity tonight, and Baruch Hashem, although the Rebbe's yahrzeit was earlier this week, but the truth is, instead of moving the shir, so Baruch Hashem will commemorate the yahrzeit of our Rebbe, Miras Hashem, this evening. So we're going to continue Miras Hashem in Tzav Zeros. And we'll say, one of the interesting things that I was reflecting upon this week with the yahrzeit of the Piagetza is the ability to miss someone who you never knew. Now the truth is, it might sound strange, but it's not strange, because the truth is we encounter this dynamic all the time. We miss a Beis HaMikdash, even though, again, we've never experienced the Beis HaMikdash. So it is possible on a neshama level to miss something, even though, again, you never had a frame of reference for that thing, even though you never had an experience, even though you never had a connection with that thing. And so all the more so, and it's all the more so acute, the power of Torah is when you learn the Torah of the Rebbe, when you learn the Torah of any tzaddik. The Gemara says, Kol Omer Davar B'Shem Omro, maybe Geula Liolam. when you say something over in the name of the person who said it, you bring redemption to the world. And the Gemara brings down that when you say the Torah of a tzaddik, sifsosav dobavos bekever. So literally, again, the lips of the tzaddik move in the grave. That there's a powerful connection, that when you learn the Torah of the tzaddik, so you connect with that individual. There's a powerful chibur, there's a powerful connection. So every week, again, when we come to the Torah of the Rebbe, so not only are we learning incredible ideas and incredible concepts and ingesting all different types of emunah and hashkafa, but we're establishing for ourselves the Rebbe, right? It's a mission of us. Aseh l'charav. Every person in life has to have a Rebbe. And when we learn the Torah of the Piazetzna, he becomes our Rebbe. And so when we mark his yahrzeit this week, or when it was marked earlier this week, although of course none of us ever knew the Piazetzna, yet all of us know the Piazetzna. And although none of us ever sat at the same tish with the Piazetzna, yet every single week we sit at the same tish with the Piazetzna. And that's the power of a relationship between a Talmud and a Rebbe. It transcends time, it transcends geography, it transcends generation. It doesn't matter if your Rebbe is alive now or your Rebbe lived close to 100 years ago. A Rebbe is a Rebbe, and a Talmud is a Talmud, as a Chassid is a Chassid. So tonight is our opportunity to express our Hakar Satov to our Rebbe, to the Piazetzna, for how he's changed our lives. In so many ways, I'll tell you one of the most incredible things that gives me the greatest amount of joy. All right, besides for my new little granddaughter, right? But that gives me incredible joy is when some of the chevra come over and they say, I never heard of the Piazetzna before, and now he literally changed my life. I think to myself, wow, what is chus? And what a power of a neshama. Can you imagine what I was saying? Can you imagine being gone almost a century and you're still changing people's lives day in and day out? That's a holy life. That's a holy existence. An existence, a life that was cut tragically short by the Nazis, Machshon v'Zichram. But a life, a neshama, a Rebbe that continues to inspire to this very day. Over 100 years, close to 100 years, not over, close to 81 years. It is the 81st yahrzeit. So 81 years after the Rebbe was murdered by the Nazis, Machshon v'Zichram, yet every single day he's changing lives. Every single day he's lifting up Yidden. Every single day he's bringing Jews closer to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, closer to each other and closer to themselves. And in the Schus Baruch Shem in the Torah we're going to learn tonight, for the little bit of time that we have together, we should give the Rebbe's Neshama and Aliyah Shavuot to Gan Eden. Shemir Hashem be a Melitz Yosher for all of Klal Yisrael. We should be Zochei Hashem to merit Mashiach, to merit Tchias HaMesim. And Halavai, I think the Rebbe would be impressed with the spread. He could be impressed with the spread. I don't know that they had any of this in Piazetzna. Chicken wings, yeah. I'm going to send it out. I don't do it justice. Yeah. All right, so we'll say, so with that, let's begin. So we are picking up Emeretz Hashem in Sif Chav Ches. We're actually coming to the end of Tzav V'Zeros. I feel like I've been saying that for about 9 months. But so we're in Sif Chav Ches. But actually, we're going to see, we're up to the last two pieces. Well, let's take a look. Chav Ches. So we'll say, so remember again, just to reorient ourselves a little bit. So we've seen already that Tzav V'Zeros is so dramatically different than any of the other Svarim. And cover this sheets. There should be sheets around if anyone still needs. If there are extra copies, okay, over here, if anyone still needs. We have plenty. I will say, so remember, one of the interesting parts about Tzav V'Zeros, right? One of the interesting parts is that this is the Rebbe's journal. And because it's the Rebbe's journal, therefore, again, it's written in a different way. It's not the same, even though the Rebbe is, you notice, Kedarka B'Kodesh doesn't bring down Mar Makomos, right? He's not bringing down sources. Again, everything he's saying is sourced, but he's not bringing down the sources. But Tzav V'Zeros is even more. It's the Rebbe's almost like free flow of his neshama. So look what he writes over here in Chav Ches. Im Rotza Atala Havchin, Esri Iyascha B'Yirascha B'Sham Min HaShaos, Im Rak B'Sichlecha Hisponanta, B'Shtalshelus V'Rak B'Ninyoncha Derech Halulim, V'Ilos Hadargin HaPrasos, Elav Yisbarach Shalamala Mehem, Ram B'Nev Damehen, Histalka V'Nichata. I'm just going to read these lines, then I'm going to translate. In Be'emes Niskala Nishmascha L'cha B'Shazu. So the Rebbe says, like this, so I'll say, this is incredible. How do you know if you actually have, it's paragraph Chav Ches, how do you know if you actually have a close connection with HaKadosh Baruch Hu? In other words, how do you know? Maybe, so you have to understand something. The Rebbe says, maybe all I have is an intellectual relationship with Hashem. And I will say, so some of you may be thinking, well, what's wrong with that? Only having an intellectual relationship with Hashem. Well, obviously, if you're thinking that, this must be your first time at the shir, right? And so the whole yisod of Chassidus, is a connection with HaKadosh Baruch Hu through the heart, through the neshama. Of course, the intellect always plays a role in everything, but that was the whole concept of Baal Shem Tov, that the intellect need not be the portal of entry, because intellect is very limited. Not everybody has intellect. But everyone has heart, and everyone has a neshama. See, if the only way to enter into HaKadosh Baruch Hu is through intellect, okay, so we know this. So those who could learn will have it, and those who could steig will have it, and those who could, darshan chakiras and Jewish, they'll have it. What about the simple Jew? What about the Pashat Yid? What is he going to have? So therefore, again, the derech HaChasidus, as espoused by the Baal Shem Tov, is that, of course, you connect to the HaKadosh Baruch Hu through the intellect. Again, and if learning, and if a blat Gemara and the Shech Levatayr, if that's your portal, beautiful. But there are other points of entry also. And you connect to the HaKadosh Baruch Hu with the heart and with the soul. And sometimes, Rabbosai, as you grow in that avodah, we recognize, and it sounds strange at first, sometimes that connection is purer than the intellect. Why? Because when a person goes ahead and connects with the intellect, sometimes it's a little bit self-serving. Right? We learn Torah all the time, Baruch Hashem. And when you learn, you get such a gishmak. Like, it's great. My mind is being exercised. I'm learning new things. Is that avodas Hashem? Or is that serving myself? Am I doing this because Chassidus Chaburah commanded me to do this? Or I'm doing this because the truth is it's enjoyable. Personally enjoyable. It's a fantastic and fulfilling exercise. And sometimes those lines get blurred a little bit. But through the heart and through the soul, it's all God. It's all HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It's all connection. It's all devekus, all of the time. So the Rebbe says something amazing. He says, if you want to discern, literally again, ri'iyascha, how you view HaKadosh Baruch Hu, v'yir ascha, and your reverence of Hashem throughout your life, imrak b'sichlecha hisbonanta. Maybe all I'm doing is forging an intellectual relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Maybe that's what I have. In other words, I'm relating to God, but it's through the intellect. Skip down a little bit. Last two lines. Or maybe when I'm connecting with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, I'm literally finding my neshama. Now, if you remember again, this goes back to B'nai Machshava Tova. If you remember again, I don't know when did we do B'nai Machshava Tova? Last year? Okay. 1997.
Before the Rav even came.
Many years ago when we did B'nai Machshava Tova. It's my fault, I shouldn't ask. Right? When we did B'nai Machshava Tova, so if you remember again, one of the things that the Piagestan was highlighting was this yisod that the whole avoda in life is to get in touch with your neshama. The neshama knows exactly what to do and how to do it. The neshama is like the Balatanya says, "Echelek eloka mima'al mamish." It's a piece, it's a spark of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The Rebbe says the greatest challenge we have in life is that often there's a barrier between ourselves and our neshama. I can't get through that, right? I'm stuck behind that barrier. And as a result, ultimately I can't connect with my neshama. But if I could just take down the barrier, connect with my neshama, then by definition the neshama knows exactly what to do and how to do it. So the Rebbe says, I'm serving HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and I think a lot of us go through this, right? I go through my day, and I'm checking the boxes. I'm davening, and I'm learning, and I'm giving tzedakah, and I'm doing chesed, right? I'm doing check. I'm doing all of these things. But how do I know? Like, is this just kind of like an exercise? Is it stuff that I'm doing? And again, I appreciate what it means, and I understand what it means, and I realize the beauty in doing it. Am I connecting with it through my seichel, or am I connecting with it through my neshama? And how do I know that? The Rebbe says, "V'ima yachid be'emes." It starts the derech. Turn the page. Should remember. Hashtal shul smerchak ein cheker laharim v'nivdal asher lamal me'em mechutz mehem v'chi ef shar lir'oso ra'isa. So again, I shouldn't read this quickly. So it's like this. V'ma yachar be'emes hitstatzta derech kol ishtalshus merchak ein cheker laharam v'nivda shalamal mehem michutz lahem. In other words, am I connected to Hashem Baruch Hu through my soul? And am I somehow gazing and connecting upon that which is so near, yet so far? V'chi efshar lir'oso ra'isa. Have I seen the things that can't be seen? Now I will say, if that statement makes no sense to you, to see the things that can't be seen, that's because I'm reading the sentence with my intellect and not with my neshama. The intellect doesn't understand what it means to see things that can't be seen. Either something can be seen or it can't be seen. There's no in between. You can't be both. But the neshama understands. I'll say, right? Think about this just a moment. Don't think about this phrase with your mind, but think about it with your neshama. To see the things that can't be seen. Yeah, I see the things that can't be seen all the time. When I see HaKadosh Baruch Hu, when I hear HaKadosh Baruch Hu, I'm seeing the things that cannot be seen. And have you been able to comprehend or grab onto the things that are so high that cannot be held onto? So can you see the things that can't be seen, and can you hold on to the things that cannot be held onto? Have you seen the light that is hidden? They'll say, isn't the wording so beautiful? Have you seen the things that can't be seen? Have you held on to the things that can't be grabbed? And ultimately, again, have you seen the light that is hidden? Umafik meir umafik esayinayim nora umishavetz hibatata vehikarta. And have you seen the light ultimately again that illuminates the eyes? And through that light, have you been able to understand and been able to identify? So I'll say, this I think what the Rebbe is highlighting over here is I think one of the not challenges in Yiddishkeit, but an interesting question to posit. What type of Jew am I? Right? And by the way, they're not mutually exclusive, because at times we're intellectual and at times we're spiritual. But how do you know in life, right? How does one know where they're holding? In terms of an intellectual Yiddishkeit or an emotional, spiritual Yiddishkeit? So we'll say page Shin Mem Vav, second paragraph. Bazos Tavchin. Here's how you have to understand it. Listen to this. In be'emtza his bonencha, targish ki'ilu ata nikra kirega min amidascha ulistakel el al nigbata. So let me tell before I translate. Let me translate the word. Let me tell you what it means. What it means is, are you able to step out of yourself? Now, literally translated, it means, if in the middle of your esbodinus, in the middle of your contemplation of Hashem, in the middle of whatever it is that you're doing, is it like kila ata nikra kirega min amidascha? Have you been torn away from yourself? Have you been torn from yourself? Ulistakel el al nigbata. And are you able to go ahead to look at, and above where you have been lifted up? So the Rebbe says essentially, are you able to step out of yourself? Are you able to step out of you? V'kol kach nisbatalta b'sha'azu ad sha'af lira yaresa. And I both say something amazing happens when I step out of myself. What happens? I'm so overwhelmed. You know, we translate yira. We've said this many times. We translate yira as fear. But the truth is, Rabbi Yitzchak Abadij of Zechusa Yagin Aleinu points out that yira can't mean fear. Right? Why not, the Rebbe says? Because when you fear something, what do? You distance yourself from it, right? I fear fire, so I'm going to distance myself from fire. So it doesn't make sense to have Yiras Hashem, to fear God, because I'm going to distance myself from Hashem. Yira means reverence. Yira means awe. When you revere something, it's on a pedestal. You look up to it. So in other words, you don't normally throw your arm around something that you revere, right? The thing that I revere is a little bit at a distance, but yet, even though it's at a distance, I want to get as close to it as possible. Things I fear, there's a little bit of a distance. And by the way, there is an element of that ultimately in our relationship with Hashem Baruch Hu also, right? Every relationship has to have some amount of fear, right? Without fear, you trample over the relationship. So, for example, Rabbi Yisrael says by Har Sinai, what did HaKadosh Baruch Hu say by Har Sinai? V'shtachavisem meirachok. The Rebbe says, bow down, prostrate from a distance. There is a certain element of fear, just like in a marriage, right? There's an element of fear, right? right? The element of fear is that if I mess up, right, I could lose it. It's not even a marriage joke, right? In other words, there has to be, right? If there's no fear, if there's no pachad, if there's no yira in a marriage, then anybody does whatever they want, right? Does whatever they want. There's no relationship. There always has, in every relationship has something. But the Rebbe says what we call yiras Hashem, yiras Shamayim is not fear, it's reverence. So the Rebbe says, how do you know? How do I know? Ultimately, again, if I'm stepping out of myself. When I'm stepping out of myself and I come in close proximity to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, there is such close proximity that I have to look away. I both say, where do we find this example of someone coming so close that they have to look away? Moshe Rabbeinu in the Sneh. Right? Moshe Rabbeinu comes close to the burning bush, and what happens? Moshe Rabbeinu again, he turns to the side, but Vayer Mahabit, he's scared to look. Sometimes again, the closer you are, you recognize what it is that you're right in proximity of. And when you recognize that proximity, you're overwhelmed by that reality. And when you're overwhelmed by that reality, I can't look. I have to turn away, not out of fear, but out of overwhelming recognition of what it is that is occurring over here. And I want to love HaKadosh Baruch Hu, but I'm almost fearful to love. There is this profound proximity relationship that engenders almost this sense of anxiety. Zeya techase v'timas. Person gets covered with sweat. V'atevosh af lispalo l'fnei hagodol hanivdol li'atzmo mikala godlios ha'oros v'akadoshos. And a person ultimately, again, goes ahead and is literally embarrassed to daven. We'll translate the words, then we'll explain what the Rebbe is really saying. Embarrassed to daven before HaKadosh Baruch Hu, who is so great, who is so awesome, who is so Kadosh. Lifnei hashochin sham shetztatzta shebli tir'ehu. V'takireu shebli takireu. And I recognize him, and I recognize that I don't recognize him. I recognize him, and I recognize that I don't recognize him. So I'll say, what is the Rebbe describing over here? The Rebbe is describing, I think, this level of losing one's self in HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That what does it mean just to lose yourself in Hashem? To step out of yourself, and to say, I'm stepping out of me, and I'm stepping into your. I just mentioned this by the Amud Yomi Shir. I saw something. I get this weekly email from Eretz Yisrael. It's like a periodical that comes out. It has a beautiful debate Torah and different things like that, current events. And in the back of it, it has Shilas Tshuvas. You know what I say? I have a number of these Rabbanim who give out their cell phone numbers. And big mistake. Hey, I can't dial that one back. Thank you. I'll say, and what they do is they get text messages from all over the country. People just send them questions. So I forgot the name of the Rav who does this, but this week I was just looking at it just before Amud Yom. I was learning it, and the question blew my mind. But I think it's pertinent to this. Somebody asked this Rav. He said, perhaps the question was like this. Perhaps in the current matzav, in the current war, the problem that we have is that we are davening too much. So I saw the question. I'm thinking, okay, this is gonna be like a one sentence answer. You're a moron. What are you talking about? Right? That's mem vav reish vav nun sofit. Right? Moron. You want the moron, right? So I thought, what are you talking? Davening, whoever heard of such a thing like this, davening too much? And the truth is, the Rav answered that beautifully, and in the beginning, what he did is, he said something amazing. He said, you have a very valid point, that we sometimes forget that our avoda is not to daven, but our avoda is to accept, and our avoda is to lean in to the Ratzon Hashem. You see, sometimes in life we become so convinced that our avoda is to shape the will of God, when instead, and sometimes that is our avoda, but sometimes our avoda is also to lean in and to accept the will of God. To say HaKadosh Baruch Hu, you know much better than I do. You understand much better than I do. You run this world, and you've been running it from the beginning of time until the end of time, and I am as just kitzel over. I am like a passing shadow in this great universal cosmos. You know better than me. So maybe my avoda is not to constantly and consistently lobby for what I want, but maybe my avoda is to lean into the Ratzon Hashem and to give myself over to HaKadosh Baruch Hu and to say, Ribono Shel Olam, I'm yours. Hine kachomer beyad hayotzer. I am like the clay in the hands of the craftsman, right? My job is to carry out your will. You make it happen, right? You do what you need to do, and I will be your trusted soldier. To give yourself over. Now, it happens to be able to say, of course, the answer is both. The answer is both, right? At the end of the day, of course, again, we daven for things. It's human nature. First of all, again, what I will tell you is, it's very important, when a person davens for something, a person should always have a little asterisk in all of their tefillos. Ribono Shalom, I'm davening for whatever it is, right? Parentheses, because I assume this is the best for me. But you run the world, and so I trust you to do what is best for me. Because remember, again, a person has to be an honor, a person has to be humble when they daven. So to daven and to say, this is what I need, this is what I want. You can say, this is what I want, that's for sure. To say, this is what I need is a shtickle gaiva. Maybe you do need it, maybe you don't need it. I certainly want it. Whether I need it is a different discussion. What the Piagetson is describing about say over here is that level of leaning into HaKadosh Baruch Hu. What's the difference between an intellectual relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu and a spiritual relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, or what he calls an neshamadik relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu? In the intellectual relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu is, we're a partnership. We're a partnership, right? HaKadosh Baruch Hu is HaKadosh Baruch Hu, I'm me, and we have like this partnership together, right? HaKadosh Baruch Hu, again, I'm like his man on the ground, and I'm going to make things happen. And as I'm going to make things happen, I'm going to ask him for this, I'm going to ask him for this, all beautiful and all incredible. I will say again, we're not knocking that. That is incredible and beautiful. But the Rebbe says there's a higher level. The higher level is what's called in Chassidus Hisbatlus. We translate it as self-negation, but self-negation sounds negative. It sounds like you are negating the self. That's not what it means. Self-negation means I'm giving myself over to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. I'm yours. I am yours. And when you give over yourself to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that means we'll say what ends up happening? I'm stepping out of myself. And when I step out of me, by definition, I am cast right into the presence of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And what happens when I'm cast into the presence of HaKadosh Baruch Hu? That's the Piaget that describes this over here. Suddenly what happens? You see the things that can't be seen. You grab the things that can't be grabbed. And you see the light that is hidden from everyone else. That's what happens when you give yourself over to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Listen, I will tell you something amazing. I think many of us experience this at different times in the year. So to me, there's always this moment like on Yomim Noraim. Because Yom Noraim, we're often hyper-focused on asking HaKadosh Baruch Hu for everything we want, which makes sense. We're asking for life, we're asking for parnos, we're asking for all these things. But I think often on Yom Noraim, there is that moment where like you transcend all of that. And suddenly, I'm actually not asking for anything. I'm not asking you for anything. In fact, what I'm doing is, I'm giving myself to you. His batlos. I'm yours. I'm stepping out of me, and I'm stepping into you. And I will say, again, the Rebbe says, if you could accomplish this, the Rebbe says, then ultimately, again, that's what he calls. This is what he calls, O im be'emes niskala nishmascha lecha b'sha'azu. How do you know if you've experienced a gilui neshama, a revelation of your soul? Revelation of the soul is accomplished when a person steps out of themselves and steps into HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And I will say, the Rebbe goes on, he says, if you look at the last part of Chav Ches, he says, Im kein avra alecha, teida shemigvul levushacha v'hala im nishmascha hibateta. If you could step out of yourself and step up to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, his batlos, give yourself over to God, positive self-negation, then ultimately, again, know that you are experiencing and seeing Hashem with your neshama. Im lav, rak besoch levushacha ve'efshach b'machshavtecha esponanta. Listen to this, Rebbe says. I will say, can you be a good Jew if you never stepped out of yourself? Of course. Of course, the Rebbe says, again, I'm doing all the mitzvahs, I'm learning all the Torah, I'm performing all of my obligations. You know what the Rebbe calls that? The Rebbe says, you're serving HaKadosh Baruch Hu in your clothing, so to speak. You're clothed. You're clothed. Okay? Right? You've got your outfit on. What's your outfit? Again, it's a beautiful outfit. It's the outfit of Torah. It's the outfit of halacha. It's the outfit of chesed. It's beautiful. A beautiful, beautiful outfit. You're wearing your outfit. And you're serving HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and again, in accordance with your intellect, your understanding, which is beautiful and incredible. He says, Aval gam mizeh al tisrachik v'gam hi tova. See, it's beautiful. The Rebbe says, and if you're wearing the outfit of Yiddishkeit, and serving HaKadosh Baruch Hu intellectually and behaviorally, that's beautiful. That is, we'll say again, we are not in any way disparaging or diminishing. Halavai, right? Halavai. All of us could say, I'm wearing the outfit, I'm wearing the clothing of Torah, I'm wearing the clothing of Tefillah, I'm wearing the clothing of Tzedakah, I'm wearing the clothing of Chesed. Halavai, we should all be zocheh to that beautiful ensemble. Halavai. The Rebbe says, and we should get zocheh to it. Just don't end your Yiddishkeit there. There's a higher level. It's the level where you shed your clothing. Now let me clarify that, right? Right? So I'll say the level where you shed your clothing is the level where, again, it's not just about the behaviors. And it's not just about, again, the mechanistic details. And it's not just about the intellect. It's a stepping out of the self and stepping into HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Now you may be thinking to yourself, well, this will conclude. How does one do that? How does one do that? So this is really where the concept of hisbodedus, of taking a little bit of time by oneself, really comes into play. You can't do this in the middle of Daf Yomi, right? You can't. You check your email, which is Minhag Yisrael, right? So again, right? You definitely could do that. Right? You could tweet, you could text, you could WhatsApp, you could do everything else that everybody somehow, I don't know, it's like 1 hour to learn, right? And somehow again, everybody's okay. And anyway, different share. Anyway, so what happens? So you can't do it when you're in the middle of learning, right? You can't do it when you're in the middle of something else. Think about it, right? To step out of yourself, everything else has to be quieted, right? Everything else has to be dimmed. Everything else has to be. I had to go into the new building today for a little bit. I didn't have to. I just wanted to. And so stand there in the courtyard, which is beautiful. Like the whole western wall is all Jerusalem stone, and mamish like magnificent and beautiful and incredible. It was like the first time in the last week that it was absolutely silent. Absolutely silent. And I forgot my phone also back in here. And so, absolutely silent. And I realized, I just looked at this piece about the Piaget's. I said, this is what I was talking about. You can't step out of yourself in the cacophony of everyday life. Even in the cacophony of religious life. You just can't. What it requires is hisbodedus. What it requires is a couple of moments of being by oneself. Even if it's only a couple of moments. And what's the avoda? We'll say, what's the avoda? And it might sound a little bit strange. The avoda is finding a couple of moments by yourself. And maybe it's just walking out into your backyard at night when no one else is around. And just closing your eyes and saying, Baruch Hu, I'm stepping out of myself and I'm stepping into you. I'm stepping into you. Hisbatlos. For these next few moments, there's no me and you. There's just you. There's just you, because I'm stepping into you, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And the Rebbe says, that's Kodesh Kadoshim of Yiddishkeit. Now the reality is, you can't live in that state all of the time, right? Because you got to come back to earth. You do have to answer your emails, right? In other words, you're going to have to come back at some point in time. You have to come back down. But even just for 5 minutes, even just for 2 minutes, to step out of myself, there's no me. For those couple minutes, there's no me. There's no individual. All there is a spark of HaKadosh Baruch Hu rejoining the source. To step out of the self, step into HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The Piagetz says, that is Neshama Dike Yiddishkeit. That is spiritual Yiddishkeit. That's what the Rebbe says. That's how you know Nisgala Nishmascha. That is when your soul truly becomes revealed. When you're learning, your soul may or may not become revealed. When you're davening, maybe yes, maybe no. Everything depends on the experience. Tzedakah said, but when you step out of yourself and you step into HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that's when the neshama in its entirety becomes revealed. Again, I can't live that way the whole day. I will say, but imagine if we could do that just for a couple of moments every single day to experience what the Piagetz is describing. Imagine how dramatically different our lives become. All right, so we'll have to stop over here for tonight. I will say tremendous. Next week, Emir Hashem. We will continue. There's going to be Ma'ariv in the main shul. We'll say we should be Zochah Emir Hashem. Stays here. Before everybody leaves, we should be Zochah Emir Hashem. Should be Zochah Emir Hashem. I will say the avoda of this year. I just want to point out the avoda of this year is you have to put it into practice. It's Erev Shabbos tonight, tomorrow. Because I will say these concepts, because they're so esoteric, sometimes it's easy come, easy go, right? Because they float in Shamayim, often they could just float away. It's our avoda to take it to grab it, to inculcate it. If we do so, we give our Rebbe's neshama and aliyah lichtra gan eden. We should just be zochem eretz Hashem and say that in the schus of stepping out of ourselves, stepping into Kadosh Baruch Hu. We should be zochem eretz Hashem. We need a new month of Besoros Tovos, the return of our hostages, the success of our soldiers, Shalom and Bracha and Atzlacha for all of Am Yisrael, and Hallelujah. We should be zochem eretz Hashem to be reunited with our Rebbe Meher Rabbi Yameinu. We're saying, marry Rebbe Meishu.
Joe, is he married?